How is it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This one here was recommended in the comment section. Can't remember the name, but I do remember it being recommended and I saved the video. We have Veterans Day. Canadian veterans celebrated in the Netherlands. So this is by the channel CBC News, The National, and links down below so you can go ahead and hit like and subscribe or whatever to the original channel if that's your thing, if that's what you want to do. The link's down there so you can go do that. So anyways, we're gonna check it out. Veterans Day was just the other day here in the United States. So we're going to check out Canadian veterans celebrated in the Netherlands. None of this has to do with America, so I'm learning for sure. Learning about the world, guys.
The Netherlands in the spring. Beautiful. Flowers in full bloom, parks pristine, streets spotless. It's a far cry from what the same spots were like 70 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say it was certainly not peaceful and serene back in the 40s.
The Germans had leveled the cities, murdered those who got in the way, and sent tens of thousands of Jews to be gassed in death camps. The Dutch who were left were starving after the 5 years of brutal Nazi occupation. By 1945, they were so hungry, some were eating tulip bulbs to stay alive.
The starved, rickets-ridden bodies of this Dutch family are witnesses to the treatment the Germans meted out to our friends in Holland.
That's not good. What does that say?
Are witnesses to the treatment the Germans...
I don't know what that says. This, something, the... Yeah, I don't know.
Meted out to our friends in Holland.
That's when the Canadians arrived, blasting their way into towns like this one, Apeldoorn, crushing the Nazis, liberating the people. The Dutch have never forgotten, never. And this week, they'll be in these streets again, by the thousands, to welcome back some of those Canadians, now in their 90s, who gave them their country, their lives back.
Nice. Okay, that was 1995.
I've been coming here for 20 years, never ceasing to be amazed at the Dutch determination to say thank you. This street with its pennants and Canadian flags is representative of many streets across the Netherlands right now, as the Dutch mark the major contribution that Canada played in the liberation of their country half a century ago.
I'm very young. I only heard stories from my grandfather and grandmother. But yes, they freed us 50 years ago, so that's why I'm here.
I think it's a love affair between the Canadians and the Dutch.
Well, 60 years is an awfully long time, but not long enough for the Dutch to forget the pain, the loss, the suffering, and the oppression of living under Nazi rule all those years during the Second World War.
See, it's crazy. I don't know a lot about World War II, but I didn't realize that the Canadians played such a big role in like liberating the Dutch from the Nazis. That's pretty cool. And that's cool that they're still honoring them in such a huge, massive way, it seems like. And this was 1995, of course, but I'm sure they didn't stop doing it in the last 20 years, 19 years.
And not long enough either to forget the liberation and those who brought it to them.
It's a beautiful day. It's out of this world.
I'm feeling liberated.
107,000 people left this place on the trains destined for the death camps of Nazi-occupied Europe. 102,000 of them perished in those camps. On days like this, the Dutch come to remember what happened here more than 65 years ago.
What is all those things, though? What is all that stuff right there? Does anybody know what these things are that's all around at the bottom here?
Come to remember what happened here more than 65 years ago.
The camp life was dominated by the train. The train was taking away 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 prisoners, and you prayed being not on the list.
Why do they never forget? Just listen to some of the stories we've heard over the years.
And I said, do you eat that every day? Sure. You want some? I'll give you a whole loaf. A whole loaf of white bread. I ran to the house and I planted it on the breakfast table and I said, here, look at it. Canadians are here.
Look at this street sign in an Apeldoorn suburb.
Canadian.
If the name looks Canadian, it's because it is. A dozen streets in this neighborhood are named after one of the almost 8,000 Canadians who never came home from the battle.
Okay.
What was it about those young men who, through the generations, the Dutch won't stop thanking? Who were those guys?
It was my northern neighbors, evidently, the Canadians. You know, the Canadians are great. No, when has anybody ever been mad at a Canadian? Or the Canadians in general? Maybe not a Canadian. I'm sure there's some of them, you know. But, like, the Canadians as a whole. When has that ever been, like, an issue that somebody's been mad at them as a country? It's not. They're just so nice. They're just super good people. They really are.
George Beale was one of them, a major with the 48th Highlanders. Every few days he'd stop and write a letter home to his wife, Ruth, in Toronto. This is one of them. Here's what he said. My own darling, I haven't written you for 5 days. I didn't feel much like it, sweetie, as we were fighting again and I was awfully busy and we've been having a tough fight. At the moment I'm sitting in a city called Apeldoorn, and the Queen's Palace is within 100 yards of me. That's the Queen's Palace, right over there. We're about 100 yards from it. He might have been right here. We entered the town proper this morning after a big advance from the Isle River. I'm fine, Ruth, so don't worry, although I'm very tired. The enemy's running like the devil again, and we have to chase him. The fighting was bloody,
Crazy.
and the dying. But through it all, George wrote to Ruth about the love he had for his men. He wrote this one on Sunday, April 22nd. I have fought and lived with those men for over a year, and to me they seemed as though they were part of my family. They never refused to go any place I ordered, and did everything I asked them to, cheerfully and willingly, knowing most of the time that I might be sending them to their deaths. There were lots of individual Canadian heroes here, Army men like George Beale, but Air Force flyers too. 50 years ago, these fields near Nistelrode in southeastern Holland were home base for a Royal Canadian Air Force Spitfire squadron. One of those Canadian pilots was a 22-year-old chap from Lethbridge, Alberta, whose name was Richard Odette. Well, near the end of December 1944, Odette had flown more than 50 missions. But up until that point, he had scored no German kills. Well, on the 29th of December 1944, all that changed. When Richard Odette flew out of one of these fields, he flew right into the history books. Before he returned, he had shot down 5 German aircraft. No other Canadian pilot, no other British pilot had scored that many victories in one mission. Meanwhile, frontline fighters broke through to capture key strategic locations. All this was happening as the Nazis were facing their final desperate days, until that last moment when the fighting and the dying suddenly stopped. 70 years ago this week, the war ended. And here's what George Beale wrote to Ruth on that same day. You can feel the emotion in his voice. Darling, you couldn't possibly have any idea just what kind of a reception it has been and still is. The people go simply mad. And I had the honor, darling, of being the leading vehicle, my Jeep. Any town we went through, the people crowded the roads, and we had a most difficult time getting past them. They all want to touch your hand or even kiss you, and they simply pelted us with flowers. My Jeep looked like a florist shop. It does make all the hardships worthwhile when you see the joy of these liberated people. For this year's returning heroes, new medals from the local mayor.
Your memories, your thoughts guide us as we shape our future.
And new thoughts about an old battle.
Well, I was stationed here during the war as a Canadian Women's Army Corps, which I'm very proud of. And it brings back so many memories. And I always have a place in my heart for Holland, for Apeldoorn.
And it's a great, great day, you know. For the little thing we did, we get so much, 1,000 times more time.
The Dutch people are so
The Dutch people are the best people in the world, and I mean it.
You know, and it's sad because most of those people are probably gone by now. This was filmed 19 years ago. Like, that's... War is a very sad thing. It's never... There's nothing good that comes out of it.
Vongeningen just down the road from Apeldoorn, in that little building. That's where the Germans finally surrendered. These extraordinary pictures capture the moment.
To the Commander-in-Chief, 21 Army Group. These forces to lay down their arms and to surrender unconditionally.
And there at the table, Canadian General George Kitching, distinguished then and just as distinguished when I chatted with him at the same table 50 years later. How do you feel when you come back in this room?
It's almost as if they're ghosts, as if you are the German on the opposite side of the table, Peter. It was full of people then. Any movement, it was a very quiet room. And in spite of the fact that there were 30 Canadian reporters, they were quiet.
The general is gone now, and so are many of the men who fought with him. But the ones who are left, the ones who still come, the ones the Dutch, young and old, still so adore, are here with their memories. The ones that hurt, the ones that leave them quiet, and the ones that somehow make them smile.
I've never felt that I sacrificed anything to be part of a liberating army.
There were so many Canadians who lost their lives here in the Netherlands. How did you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
I put it out of my mind altogether, but nonetheless I cry when I go to the cemetery and see my friends' graves.
I never learned to cry. You just feel it inside.
What does it mean to you guys to be remembered the way you are here in this country, the way they look at you, the way they react to you?
Well, it's 70 years ago that we were here, but still, the kids are still enthusiastic about what we did here 70 years ago. And I love to see kids, the way they greet us and the way they look in such admiration at us, you know?
Really, it was something to feel the happiness, the joy of the liberation.
I asked the people I was staying with, what is this touching bit, you know? They asked permission to touch you, and I couldn't get over that, so they want to touch a liberator, and they want their children to touch a liberator.
20 years ago, I asked the then mayor of Apeldoorn why it was that the Dutch never forgot the Canadians. His answer was very simple, very direct. He said, you have to have been occupied to appreciate what freedom really means. And when you do, you never forget who gave it to you. That's why Canada is never forgotten here. Never.
It makes sense. Well, that's the end of that. Looks like there's a burger place right there. Is that a burger place? Like, does that mean hamburgers? I know that has nothing to do with the video. Yeah, this is crazy, guys. This war in general, just it's just sad. It's just, war is crazy. It's not good. I feel bad for all the people that's in Europe right now dealing with the war in Ukraine, and not even just that war. I mean, there's wars all around the world, and it sucks. And I wish somebody would just put a damn stop to it already. That was a good video. It was really, it was good to see. It really was, and I learned a lot. I didn't know anything about the Canadians, having anything to do with it. Anthony's excited. He's handed me a popsicle. He wants me to cut the popsicle open for him. So I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have a super fun, awesome day. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.